The Pentagon says that more than 5,200 U.S. troops will be sent to the U.S.-Mexico border to prevent Central American migrants from reaching the United States. It's a dramatic increase over the 800 to 1,000 troops initially forecast.
The specific request for assistance is for the active duty military to enhance the capacity and capabilities of CBP by providing robust military capabilities.
Reporter Phil Stewart is on the story.
It includes pilots who will be transporting Customs and Border Protection personnel to different locations. It includes all kinds of support personnel that will be doing really support roles along this border. And now we'll have a force that is equivalent in size, although not kind of the same composition as the U.S. forces in Iraq. So I think you're looking at a very large-scale deployment to a very uncertain end.
The announcement comes just days after President Trump declared the migrant caravan making its way to the U.S. a national emergency. But critics say Trump is overstating the caravan's impact in order to influence the upcoming midterm elections.
You got some bad people in those groups. You got some tough people in those groups. And I'll tell you what, this country doesn't want them.
Trump has also vowed to pull funding from Central American countries who failed to stop the flow of migrants. U.S. officials say the troops would not play an active law enforcement role, but help provide logistical and infrastructure support to Border Patrol agents and National Guard troops stationed along the border. So far, the move seems to be doing little to deter the migrants. Despite the threat of U.S. troops and deadly clashes between migrants and authorities along the Guatemala-Mexico border on Sunday, the caravan of men, women, and children is still on the move.
My office charged Robert Bowers with federal murder and assault charges.
The man accused of shooting and killing 11 worshipers at a Pittsburgh synagogue while allegedly shouting "All Jews must die" made his first appearance in federal court Monday after what is believed to be the deadliest attack on American Jews in U.S. history.
Our investigation of these hate crimes continues, and rest assured, we have a team of prosecutors working hard to ensure that justice is done.
Bowers appeared to target the Tree of Life Synagogue in part because of a program it sponsored in support of refugees and immigrants, and reportedly posted often about his contempt for the migrant caravan.
We can't let people break in and assault our country.
In Washington, the White House tried to fend off criticism that the president's rhetoric has encouraged violence, and that a series of Monday morning tweets taking aim at the media, calling it again the true enemy of the people, was only making matters worse.
The only person responsible for carrying out either of these heinous acts were the individuals who carried them out. It's not the president.
Why is the president suggesting it's the news media? The president's the one placing blame here.
No, the president's not placing blame. The president's not responsible for these acts.
The president called Saturday's shooting an act of pure evil and called on Americans to rise above hatred. That wasn't enough for the leaders of a Pittsburgh-based Jewish group, who on Monday told Trump in an open letter that he was, quote, not welcome in Pittsburgh until you fully denounce white nationalism. The president and the First Lady plan to travel to Pittsburgh on Tuesday.
Our department is taking many steps to combat hate crimes.
Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein vowed a crackdown on the kind of violent extremism seen in the Pittsburgh synagogue massacre. But critics are blasting such efforts, saying the federal government is not doing nearly enough to monitor and investigate right-wing hate groups. Mark Hosenball is on the story.
When you ask the U.S. government tough questions about what they do to monitor right-wing groups, they say, well, the right-wing groups are not a designated terrorist organization under U.S. law, and therefore they can't monitor them. They can only investigate them when they have evidence of a crime.
Current and former U.S. officials told Reuters federal agents focus closely on suspected Islamist militants, such as in the killing of 8 people on a bike path in New York City a year ago. But they say few agents are focused on preventing right-wing extremists, such as alleged Pittsburgh shooter Robert Bowers, from carrying out attacks. Bowers has a history of posting anti-Semitic messages on social media filled with slurs and conspiracy theories.
Perhaps clarifying the law on that score would also make it easier and more appropriate for agencies like the FBI, like Homeland Security, to monitor such activities.
In a letter to House Judiciary Committee Chair Bob Goodlatte Monday, Democrats, led by Ranking Member Gerald Nadler, called for emergency hearings on ways to combat hate crimes and domestic terror.
Bodies and debris were recovered in Indonesia late Monday after a passenger plane crashed into the sea with 189 people on board. Search and rescue teams brought the remains to the Indonesian capital of Jakarta, while they were transferred to a police hospital for identification. The Lion aircraft went down not long after leaving Jakarta's airport. Flight JT610 apparently requested a return to base before it lost contact, just 13 minutes after takeoff. Officials now acknowledge there are likely to be no survivors. Relatives of some of the passengers arrived at Jakarta's airport looking for answers. Indonesia's president was there to meet them and insisted that rescue workers must work all night to find the body of the aircraft. According to flight tracking service Flight Radar 24, the plane was a new Boeing 737 MAX 8. Lion Air's CEO said the plane had an unspecified technical issue during a previous flight. He added that the pilots on the doomed jet had 11,000 hours of flying between them. Although Indonesia is one of the world's fastest growing aviation markets, it has been plagued by air disasters. Lion Air itself has had more than a dozen accidents in its nearly 20-year history, but none with fatalities since 2004. The airline says it has 10 other planes of the same Boeing model, but has no plans to ground them.
Stocks whipsawed in the final hours of trading Monday, the Dow swinging 900 points from high to low in a matter of minutes, only to cut steep losses in half to end the day with a 245-point drop. The sell-off temporarily pushed the Dow and S&P 500 10% from record highs hit just weeks ago, briefly joining the Nasdaq into what is known as correction territory. Reuters markets and economics editor Dan Burns.
The attempt to rally off last week's big sell-off really ran out of steam in the afternoon after we got this Bloomberg report that the White House is thinking about December for announcing this $257 billion round of tariffs on China. We'd known the number, we didn't know the timeline, and certainly a lot of investors were not expecting it to be so soon. I mean, that's only just 4 or 5 weeks from now.
But trade is not the only thing swirling around to form a toxic stew for investors. Boeing was the biggest drag on the Dow, the aerospace giant reeling not only because it gets roughly 25% of all sales from China, but one of its planes, a relatively new 737 MAX 8, was involved in a Lion Air crash in Indonesia, killing everyone on board. Shares of Boeing suffering their biggest drop in well over 2 years. But in a promising sign, the bond market, which usually sees a spike in buying when chaos ensues in stocks, was relatively calm, suggesting panic swings in the stock market isn't spreading fear to the rest of Wall Street.